everybody. My name is Adam Thorne and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast. Now, a little bit of trivia for very long-term listeners is that I've basically been presenting or have been a guest on the Australian Aviation Podcast for almost 4 years. And in that 4 years, I've not missed a single episode. Last week, I did miss an episode. And it's fair to say, in my absence, the team was running riot. I sent a message to, and I'll introduce him in a sec, my fellow co-presenter Jake Nelson in advance, and I said, I would tell you not to use this as an opportunity to kind of mug me off, but I know you won't listen. What surprised me is that the abuse started within seconds. In fact, from the opening sentence, it didn't even build up to it. It was like vultures over my carcass. Obviously, I wasn't just going to let this go. Jake Nelson, could you talk about why you did this thing? And can you also try and you were doing some accent. You were trying to take my beautiful British accent. Can we hear this again? How do I speak?
Well, you speak very well, I think, Adam.
No, I want to hear it. Say it again. What was the you did like, oh, what, governor? Or something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, it's that bad.
You said it, Adam, not me.
Yeah. Well, he's keeping very quiet now. He's like, he's been caught out. Chris,
I don't know. I mean, Chris, who do you think does it? Who do you think does Adam Thorne better, me or Adam Thorne?
I have to say the man, the myth, the legend that is Adam Thorne.
Now,
traitor.
Well, it's fair to say that Chris didn't, and I've listened back to it numerous times, obviously made notes and stuff, even though you didn't go in and personally mock me, I didn't see you telling him to stop either.
Oh, did you
enjoying it?
No,
you were enjoying it.
I have a feeling our editing team probably edited out a few of my burn comments that I did make.
Yeah.
I did make some.
Anyway, there we go. Chris Fenton, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, friend.
Well, shall we crack on with the rest of the episode then, Adam?
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, we're not gonna crack on with this episode because as we usually start with these episodes, we will do a shout out to some of our fans, some of the things that have happened. Chris, have you met any of our adoring fans on your travels this week?
I haven't met any, but I've heard from some on socials. So a special shout out to Johnny and the team at Wellcamp Airport. They've had a bit of a big week up there lately with some aircraft movements that you wrote a fantastic story on. So shout out to Johnny and the Wellcamp Airport team. Johnny listens to the podcast every week. So Johnny, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy this one. And also Sean from Chatswood. Sean is an aviation enthusiast and loves our podcast as well.
What we should do is get anyone, rather than do you get people to record audio sounding like me and then get them to send that in?
That'd be a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe we could give away a membership or something.
Guess the real Adam Thorne. Just get a bunch of audio clips.
We
could
like do the Thornies.
Yeah, be like a police lineup. Anyway, Jake, I don't know if you have any shout-outs, but you've been on some travels this week.
Well, I do have a couple of shout-outs.
Okay.
There's a shout-out, YouTube commenter at Burnster787 says, "Hey guys, love the podcast. I listen every week. Well done, Jake." So I think that's vindication, Adam. I think that's vindication for my approach.
But it doesn't sound like
Is
we
that
can
your
verify
YouTube profile
him.
name?
Yeah.
I plead the fifth. We also have another shout out, Mark from last week. I gave a shout out to Mark then. Mark says, "Thanks for the recent shout out regarding the winning Cebu trip to the Philippines. Remember to note in your Manila folder a trip to a nearby bakery for that local version of the Australian delicacy, the Manila Slice. Cheers, Mark from Perth. Reader since 1978."
Oh, that's great. It was good to know he's still reading.
Good on you,
We've
Mark.
not lost
well
them all.
done. And Mark, well done on the puns there. Have a drink, my friend. He got a few in there.
He did. But yes, I did go out to South by Southwest Sydney over the weekend to the Tech Expo to see the Qantas booth that they had out there, because Qantas was, a major sponsor of South by Southwest this year. And I happened to get myself a platinum pass through means.
Purchased the tickets.
No, I was given it for free for doing sea shanties.
No, we don't want Media Watch on us. No. Go on, anyway, so you got the tickets.
So I got myself a platinum pass, and I went to the Tech Expo on Saturday to see the Qantas booth. And they had it was all about Project Sunrise, which is this new project of theirs to use the A350-1000s to do non-stop flights to New York and London starting in about 2025. And they had mock-ups of the first and business class, sort of a first class suite and business class seats there, and they also had like this VR experience where you could put on the headset and like look around the inside of the cabin, and they showed off the business and the first class and the premium economy and the regular economy. It looked very nice. The interiors of those A350s.
It was like you were in there. You were experiencing it essentially.
Well, you were just kind of sitting in one place. You could look around, but you couldn't like move forward and backwards or anything.
So you didn't get to go to the stretching area.
The wellness center was there. I did see the wellness zone, and I was gratified to see that there will be cans of lemonade there, as well as the kombucha and everything like that. So something for me if I ever go to London or New York on Project Sunrise. But no, it all looks very nice. I saw the mock-ups. The mock-ups look pretty comfortable, and I saw what it will look like in the VR experience inside the cabins. And those economy seats. I mean, I was looking at the economy seats. They got maybe about as much legroom as like a premium economy on a Virgin or a Jetstar plane here. So it's. I mean, you'd hope so, wouldn't you, if you're flying in it non-stop to New York? But no, it's very nice cabin, at least in the virtual experience.
Well, that's all right. All right. Well, we keep tabs on that. Let's go. Actually, let's go for a quick break. When we come back, we'll steam into some proper news. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, welcome back. So we've had a very big story in the last week, which is that Qantas, as regular listeners will know, was set to purchase Alliance, the kind of FIFO and charter operator. And that deal happened, I think it was like a year or so ago now. And then it was kind of kiboshed by the ACCC. But we didn't know whether Qantas would essentially appeal that decision. A few days ago, Qantas come out and said that they were going to essentially discontinue with that deal. Essentially, it was too much trouble for what it was worth. Jake, tell us a little bit about this, because this is quite a major rollback.
Yeah, this was in a joint statement, so this was not just Qantas walking away. Alliance has walked away from it as well. Basically, they said there's no reasonable path forward, given its opposition by the ACCC. Qantas will still keep its 20% stake in Alliance, and they will keep this agreement that will see Alliance, fly up to 30 E190s for Qantas under this wet leasing. And in fact, Qantas is going to exercise an option for 4 additional E-jets under the agreement. So Alliance will be operating 26 E190s on Qantas's behalf. This will happen by April next year. But essentially, the statement said both companies believe that the acquisition would have created customer value without lessening competition in the highly competitive resources sector, particularly through the efficiencies created through a combined fleet of F-100 aircraft. Qantas will continue to serve the growing resources sector through its existing charter operations. It currently has around 27% of the total charter market.
What's interesting about this is arguably the first significant decision that Vanessa Hudson, the new CEO, has made. Now, we wouldn't necessarily know what the maestro would have done, but when he was asked about it a number of months ago, he sort of hinted that the plan was to continue to go on and fight this. Certainly, we didn't get any impression. How do you read this, Jake? Because the way I look at it, if Alan Joyce was in charge, he was not a man to give up on any battle ever. So how do you read this? Because this feels like Vanessa's looked at it and gone, we've got enough on our plate as it is. The last thing we want to do is have another row of the ACCC. It's not worth getting involved. Yeah,
particularly with the current sort of brouhaha with the ACCC over the whole 8,000 cancelled flights thing. It's probably, I'm thinking, Vanessa Hudson might have just looked at this deal and thought, look, juice ain't worth the squeeze, to use an expression.
Have a drink.
That's not even a pun. That's not a pun. That's a folksy aphorism is what that is, Chris. It's a folksy aphorism.
We'll still let them have a drink.
Of juice. But you have to squeeze it yourselves. Yeah, basically she would have looked at it, and I think the mindset is, as you were saying, Adam, this isn't worth it. We've got our existing alliance with Alliance. I was going to say agreement with Alliance, our existing alliance with agreement. We've got our existing alliance with agreement, and I think, and it's, it's working out fine. It ain't broke. let's not try to fix what ain't broke. Let's just, stick with what we've got and make the most of what we got, rather than dragging this whole thing before another, costly battle with the ACCC.
One of the interesting things is that what used to be the fairly quiet FIFO sector has, in the last year or 18 months, got a lot more interesting, in that you had Qantas obviously attempt to buy Alliance, and you had Rex as well by Cobham, which essentially to boost their National Jet Express. And then Rex as well now have launching more flights in Queensland, which is Alliance's heartland. And then one of the reasons that this has all happened is that in a very uncertain world that we've certainly had during COVID, and in the uncertain world that we seem to be heading into, obviously we've still got a war in Ukraine, potentially or perhaps currently a war, with Israel and Palestine, and potentially a wider conflict. That has the potential to be disastrous for international flying in the long term. But those FIFA flights are very, very reliable. They're kind of safe, easy money in a way, in that these resource companies, not short of a few bob, they're always going to need them. So we've had big airlines increasingly invest in it. So for me, it's very, very significant that Qantas has decided to cut their losses and move out of this market.
Not entirely move out of the market. Again, they're still keeping their 20% stake in Alliance, and they've still got that agreement to operate Qantas-linked flights. But yeah, they've both sides have sort of walked away from this deal to buy Alliance outright.
Okay, well, I think we'll go for one more quick break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of the week's news. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, welcome back. So we were talking there a little bit about the FIFA and charter market, but talking about regional flying, we've had a very significant announcement of a restructure or of a change in management at Qantas Link. Jake, tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so John Gissing, the CEO of Qantas Link, announced back in May, June that he was stepping down as of November. They commenced at Qantas a search for his replacement, and they have picked the current executive manager of fleet programs, Rachel Yangoyan, as the new CEO of Qantas Link. So she's basically been in charge of this whole the entry into service program for the big fleet renewal that Qantas has got going on. This includes the Airbus A220 fleet that's going to be replacing the Boeing 717s at Qantas Link. The first one of those is due to arrive by the end of the year. And this is a pretty significant moment, actually, in Qantas, because with Vanessa Hudson as CEO of the group, Steph Tully as CEO of Jetstar, and now Rachel Yangoyan as head of Qantas Link, that's the first time that all three of these positions will be held by women.
And they are the three most senior positions as well. So if you think now the senior management in Qantas is an all-female staff, then also you've got Virgin by Joan Halitka, also a woman. That is a breakthrough moment for the Australian aviation industry. Now, me and Chris a couple of weeks ago, and they may have talked about this previously when they mugged me off last week, we were in as a Women in Aviation conference in Melbourne. Chris, I'll bring you in here. This is a breakthrough moment for the industry, because with every single sort of top position held by a female, this is a once-in-a-generation chance to encourage more girls and women to get in the industry and to kind of change the imbalance we've got at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And there certainly is a strong imbalance within the sector and industry, and it's fantastic to see that slowly, very, very slowly, more females are being empowered with leadership positions in an aviation role. Look, good on Qantas. Obviously, they believe she's the right person for the job. The only thing I would say is she's kind of part of the furniture and part of the old world problem. So is she part of the goiter brigade and goiter problem? Who knows? Time will tell. Obviously, very exciting times ahead for Qantas Link with their fleet renewal, Qantas period with their fleet renewal. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of it, but I certainly wish her all the very best in the role. And it's awesome to see that our, two most nationally recognised airlines here in Australia, being the Qantas Group and Virgin, have strong female leadership at the helm.
It's been a long-term topic of ours on this podcast that across all kind of STEM subjects or STEM professions that you have a lack of females, but that's particularly is particularly prominent in aviation, just because there is still, we spoke about this before, there is this stereotype that you have female cabin crew and you have a kind of an old white male who's the pilot, and that is a stereotype that has perpetuated and then has become a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, which has made everything a lot more difficult. You've also got a problem of how we bring because when boys and girls are boys and girls at school, they have an almost equal interest, say, in STEM subjects, and as they get older, you see the girls drop off, and then as it becomes a career option, it very much drops off. And in particular in aviation, it gets solidified into kind of gender roles. And the kind of the issue the industry has is nobody knows exactly why this is the case. It's not there is one specific reason, and also people don't necessarily know how you fix this problem. But certainly, what we are seeing is if you have strong female leadership, then they will give more women a shot kind of naturally. So this does feel like a kind of a huge progression, because we have an underlying talent shortage across all roles in the industry.
Correct.
And unfortunately, the single biggest issue is if you're kind of wiping out half of the population, then you're never going to fill those pipelines. So this is something that absolutely needs to happen for the kind of a future of our industry, regardless of your ethical kind of considerations.
Yep.
Well, I will note, Qantas Domestic CEO and Qantas International CEO are still both men, Marcus Svensson and Cam Wallace, respectively. But it is definitely a significant step, because before Alan Joyce left and before John Gissing's departure was announced, only Steph Tully was, there was only Steph Tully in sort of a female CEO role, as well as Olivia Worth at Qantas Loyalty, who is stepping down, as we've noted. But in terms of the sort of airline arms of Qantas, it's gone from basically 1 out of 3 to 3 out of 3 if you don't count international and domestic.
Now, a story that most of our listeners, though not all of them, will be familiar with, is the story of Deborah Laurie. So Deborah Laurie was essentially Australia's first kind of female airliner pilot, and she really did break through that kind of glass ceiling, but she did it in a fairly spectacular way, in that she took Ansett to court and through various court battles, because he was essentially, or Reg Ansett was essentially stopping having female pilots, and she took him to court, eventually kind of won, to such an extent. A lot of people say it was Deborah Laurie that kind of almost brought down Reg Ansett and caused this huge change. But we've had her on the podcast before. We've interviewed her a couple of times. But that's how hard she fought all those years ago. Now we're getting to the other end. This is something that she would never have been able to dream of. But if you are listening, I like to think she is, huge shout out to Deborah Laurie, because she was the first person in this country really to make any of this happen.
Yep. An amazing woman.
Okay. Anyway, move on to the next story, which I would ask Jake to talk about, but actually I wrote the story, so I need to talk about this. And this is the very mysterious, we think, kind of collapse of Australian operations for Bamboo Airways. So that is a Vietnamese airline. It looks like they're going to stop their flights imminently. We think that after this week, that's going to be it. We think that because you can't go and book any new flights. The carrier posted this very cryptic statement on its website saying it was going to cut the frequency of underperforming routes, and particularly cut the frequency of its 787 longer haul routes. And then you had the local sales manager go on LinkedIn and basically say, I've been made redundant today, and so is everybody here. And the interesting thing is that Bamboo really, they only launched last year, Australian operations, and it seemed to be a very big deal for them. They had 3 routes, I believe, from Melbourne and Sydney, and now all of a sudden they are gone. Chris, you were talking to me about this earlier. I want to pick your brains on this. This is interesting because you had an airline trying to take advantage of this post-COVID world, and has now found it's maybe not as easy as I thought it would be.
Look, to full credit to Bamboo and for giving it a go. But what's interesting here is I guess none of us really knew the inner workings of the airline. And so I was kind of doing a bit of research last night. And in its short history, it's gone through CEOs, like we change underwear. The most recent CEO was only in the role for 2 months. And
It changes its CEO once a month?
yeah, almost. Almost, Jake. Almost. I'm trying so hard to look at you and not laugh. Sorry. So yeah, they changed CEO. They've changed CEOs quite a lot. The last CEO only lasted 2 months. The current CEO has only been in the role a short time and gone in there and basically said something's not working. So they are, from what I've read and understand last night, is getting rid of all their wide body operations. So in essence, saying bye-bye to the Dreamliner, the 787s that they operate, which are stunning aircraft, and the cabin layouts on board those aircraft are stunning. But they're leaving the fleet, and they're going to be basically a domestic single aisle, single aircraft type operator, and try and make that work.
I won't. I don't want to go too much sort of behind the curtain into the inner workings of journalism. But I wrote the story up yesterday after I did a bit of digging, and it went up like relatively late, about 8 o'clock at night. Very on the ball was Jetstar, and I'm going to name him. I don't think he's going to mind because this is a good thing. James Hancock, who works at the communications department at Jetstar, quick as you like, got in touch with me. He said, "We're monitoring demand to and from Ho Chi Minh City, and we have thousands of low fares available on popular Vietnamese destinations to Melbourne and Sydney. One-way fares between Sydney, Melbourne, and Ho Chi Minh City currently start at $349. You, Mr. James Hancock, are on the ball. You have seen the opportunity of the airline going down, and you've gone right in there. Give that man a promotion. That is excellent work. Yes.
You'd have to think that Vietjet would be popping some champagne corks as well now, because that's probably going to be a big boost to their routes into Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I don't think we would be too surprised if in the coming days we see Vietjet and AirAsia and possibly even Vietnam and Jetstar come out with rescue fares for passengers who had booked Bamboo Airways to fly beyond I guess the next couple of weeks of their operation. So any customers who had booked for later this year or early next year to fly Bamboo, unfortunately, we don't know what that means for their money. But in times like this, it's not uncommon to see other airlines come out with special rescue fares for
I just love
those passengers.
So this is why you're on the show, someone that actually knows what he's talking about and is got decades of aviation experience. Rescue fares, that's brilliant. That's literally like somebody in the marketing team goes, hang on a minute, an airline's gone down, we can make something of this.
Look, and that's pretty much what happens. It's a special fare unique to passengers. You do have to prove that you're a ticketed, booked and paid for passenger. So you can't just, lob up to Jetstar and go, I booked Bamboo. You do have to prove that you had a valid Bamboo booking. And they give you access to a special fare to soften the blow
sweet,
for the money that you've already lost. I like that. I will give credit to the airline industry when we see the sad demise of an airline or a particular route. 9 out of 10 times, most other carriers jump in and come to the aid of affected passengers.
Well, I mean, it's not just from the goodness of their own hearts.
Of course it's not. Absolutely it's not. No way.
If you ask me, I think that this development from Bamboo Airlines probably stemmed from the high rate of attacks by hungry pandas on their planes.
I knew that was coming. Well, on that...
And hopefully Bamboo Airlines seen some green shoots soon.
Oh, dear. Now, right, on that note, we ran a story last week. I'm going to read you out the headline. It says, Hogging the skies, new study tracks feral pigs with drones. I suspect Jake only wrote this story purely to get that headline in.
I again plead the fifth.
Yeah. So Jake, tell us a little bit more about this and where the inspiration for this extraordinary wordcraft came from.
Yeah, well, this was from Charles Darwin University. They've been conducting a study about the best time to track feral pigs, because it is a significant conservation issue, especially up in the top end. You've got feral pigs running riot all over the place. You need to be able to track and monitor where they are. And so they did a bunch of observations with drones and with tracking technology, and they basically looked for when can we find the most pigs with drone observation technology. And they basically found that mornings during the wet season as well as early evenings are the best times to survey the wild pig populations, with early evenings offering a detection probability of around 50 to 75%. Mid-afternoon was the worst time to pick up feral pigs. But as soon as I saw this press release, I knew that I had to use hogging the skies. It sang to me like a siren, and Adam was not there to lash me to the mast, I went through with it.
I would say I don't know what kind of down market publication would run that press release, but here we are. And in fact, they'll probably look at that headline and be like, I can't believe they did that. Right, before we finish up, my favourite story of the week, and I'll let Jake talk through this. The headline is, Bonza CEO takes 8-hour train to avoid $1,000 airfare. Jake, what's going on here?
Yeah, Tim Jordan, CEO of Bonza, posted on his LinkedIn the other week, basically saying flights from Sydney to Coffs Harbour, return tickets, round trip tickets are costing like around $1,000. He's got a shot of Rex airfare for $994 round trip, Qantas airfare $1,054 round trip, which is astonishing. But he's basically said, I've been taking these 8-hour train rides, with New South Wales Trainlink, and he did say thank you, New South Wales Trainlink, to avoid having to pay these exorbitant airfares from regional carriers. And he said, this is why we need, more access to Sydney Airport, more slots at Sydney Airport. We love a slot story around here. We need access to slots at Sydney Airport so that we can offer people low-cost airfares to get to some of these regional destinations. He said one meeting. He says he's taking these train rides to get to meetings. He said one meeting is very ironically with Sydney Airport to talk about access for Bonza at Sydney so that we can potentially bring low-cost airfares to 2 million more regionally based Australians in about 16 regional locations across the country, and of course nearly 6 million residents in the Sydney Basin. He said that's potentially 8 million Australians, nearly 1 in 3 of us, with potentially more access, a lot of potentialities, with potentially more access to low-cost airfares to and from Sydney, and consequently hundreds of millions of dollars of additional annual economic benefit, plus the social and community benefits, all that from Sydney slots that today go unused by incumbent operators because they get cancelled, etc., and consequently produce zero to no benefit for anyone, excluding incumbents, of course. So he's been a long-time critic of the slot system, and now I'm not sure if he's taking these train rides to avoid the airfares specifically, or to make a point about avoiding the airfares.
Well,
but
so firstly, we've always said Tim, friend of a show, and we spoke highly of him because he is a genuinely very down-to-earth guy, very generous with his time, and for want of a better word, but there's no bullshit there. He talks very straight. He's very, very good to deal with. Now, I would say, and I do understand that the extortionate flight fees, I understand that. Now, I would say that even as a startup airline, I'm sure that him being the CEO, Bonza would have signed off those expensive air trips. He could have put that on expenses. He wouldn't have got told off. It would have been flagged. But he's gone, you know what? I'm so disgusted by that, and I will treat that company's money like it's my own, that I will endure an 8-hour train ride that is both astonishingly tight and incredibly admirable at the same time. I mean, as a ferryman that's very, very careful with his money, there's a cost of living crisis on, and I love that. He's living like the punters. I love that.
Look, I think it's a great call, and it certainly highlights an issue that a lot of our regional Australians face almost on a daily basis. Like to have almost $1,000 airfare for a return Sydney Coffs Harbour, a 45-minute flight per direction. that can get some people overseas. That kind of money.
And as well, and there's a link coming in a minute, our railways are not necessarily the best. We do not have the Japanese-style bullet trains, which I say we should have them. We're not a fan of that on an airline show. But we don't. If you actually are having to trudge around regional Australia and you can't drive, or you're not able to drive, or it's not practical to drive, then you are left with these very slow, quite unreliable, old, rickety trains.
No, I have taken a few New South Wales Trainlink services in my time. They've always been nice enough. It can be relaxing to sort of look out the window of a train and watch the world go by. Just ask a friend of the show, Jeb Brooks. Jeb, if you're listening, he moved from aviation to trains on his YouTube channel during the pandemic.
Wow.
And has seen some success from that. People really like his train videos. But it can be nice to take a train. But if you're having to take an 8-hour train ride because the alternative is thousands of dollars in airfares, then it's probably not such a great experience for you.
Wow.
Correct. And what I will say, though, Adam, is there will come a point in time when New South Wales Trainlink in Australia does get a high-speed train connection with faster, newer trains.
Don't say that. Not on this show.
This
Get
will
out.
need
Get out
to
now.
put the airlines on notice. If you want to maintain the customer loyalty base, you really need to look at your pricing structure. Now, I'm not sure when Tim was looking at those flights for what travel dates, but $1,000 return on a Sydney Coffs Harbour is absolutely disgusting. When you and I recently flew to Melbourne and our tickets were $300-400 return. To Melbourne.
And this is something, there's a larger problem in regional aviation, of course, which, Bonza, to its credit, seems to be doing a lot to address.
Yep.
I was speaking with Raymond from Sydney Flight College. Shout out to Raymond if you're listening.
Raymond, yeah. Hey, Raymond.
We love
you.
Raymond here. And I was speaking to him for a feature, and he was saying... It was about the cancellations issue with regards to pilot shortages and such, and he was saying basically in some communities there's one flight a week.
Yep.
You get one plane a week, and if that flight gets cancelled or if you miss that flight, there's no flight like an hour later from Sydney to Melbourne. It's either you wait a week and potentially miss whatever you were going into Sydney or Melbourne or wherever for, or you drive for hours and hours and hours to get where you were going.
Yep.
One of the extraordinary things I found, and I've been in Australia now for 7 years, is as far as the media is concerned, I'm saying that the media, basically everybody lives in Sydney, Melbourne or Brisbane. But when you actually look at the population breakdown of this country, actually the vast majority of people do not live in the heart of these three cities. They are either in towns or cities outside of those cities, or they're in God knows how many regional towns, which the vast majority of them are astonishingly poorly have a very poor infrastructure, have very poor connections. And it's one of the things that kind of infuriates me that you already have a small population and a dispersed population, but by not having these links, you are massively hurting so many people. You are massively holding back the economic potential of the country.
Absolutely they are. And this is why we have New South Wales Trainlink. So shout out to, I know a lot of the New South Wales Trainlink staff, a lot of them are my friends, and a lot of them are ex-airlines. So they do a great job. So shout out to the New South Wales Trainlink staff. But this is the very reason we have a Trainlink. This is the very reason we still have coach service here in Australia.
And I don't know how coincidental this is, but we did run this story on the same day that Bonza started announcing its sort of group and corporate bookings arm. It's offering these now bespoke packages for group and corporate events, and they're saying a lot of people now, especially for end of year Christmas parties, are choosing to give their staff getaways with Bonza flights, and so I don't know how much that those two stories played into one another, but it's interesting that Tim was talking about having to take 8-hour train rides for business meetings at approximately the same time as Bonza was announcing corporate bookings.
Wow. Before we wrap up, and I've been trying to get to this link for 5 minutes or so, and you've stopped me, both of you, but I'm going to get to it now. Earlier this week, I went to...
One more thing about Bonza that I wanted to...
Earlier this week, I went to a press event, and I happened to be sat next to a fantastic man called Bruce Belbin, who is the editor of Railway Digest here in Australia. So the editor of Australian Aviation and Railway Digest came together in an extraordinary moment
That's
for
an uncanny
all
coincidence.
forms of public transport. And we were talking, and I was like, very much together. If we work together, we could rule this country with the transport at our disposal. Anyway, Bruce, if you are listening, and I doubt he is because he's more of a trains man than a planes man. But if you are listening, Bruce, it was lovely to meet you. And maybe one day we will work together.
Or potentially you will shake hands and there will be some kind of matter-antimatter reaction and you will both disappear.
The universe will explode. And on that note, we do have to wrap things up for this week. But I will thank my co-host, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, friend.
And Jake, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
And we will be back on this show the same time next week. But for now, from us, goodbye.
Bye-bye.